Welcome, everyone. I'm Mariquita Solis, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org was founded in 1998 and is a leading resource for faith-based animal rights veganism. Led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we provide free resources for people seeking to live compassionately towards all creatures. Our extensive library includes vegan sermons and commentaries, animal rights strategies, action alerts, events, and works by various vegan authors. We also sponsor websites for animal rights organizations. Our mission is to unite compassionate individuals worldwide who honor the dignity of all creatures. All right, so today I'm very excited to welcome my good friend, Carrie Freeman. And Carrie came to my church, Unity North, recently and gave a speech that was beautiful. Yeah, it was incredible. So yes, and
we did it was an exercise. I don't want to sound like I'm this wonderful poet because I'm not. It was like an exercise in empathizing with other animals and putting yourself in their perspective. So it was just kind of a fun thing to do, but it was I'd never done something like that at a church before. So it was so nice of you to invite me. Animal ministry.
That was wonderful. Yeah, I know. And then let me get back to, telling everybody who you are. It was great to have you in person. And that really, people really resonated with that. So you are a professor of communications at Georgia State University, and you Carrie researches environmental communication, critical animal studies, media ethics, and strategic communication for activists. And she is also an author. So she's written The Human Animal Earthling Identity, Shared Values, Unifying Human Rights, Animal Rights, and Environmental Movements, and also Framing Farming Communication Strategies for Animal Rights, and co-edited a 2015 anthology, Critical Animal and Media Studies. A grassroots activist since the 1990s, she co-authored the animalsandmedia.org style guidelines and has co-hosted the In Tune to Nature radio show and podcast since 2010 on Radio Free Georgia. So, all right. So I had to let everybody know that, or I wouldn't be giving you the credit you deserve. So yeah, back to you really can change lives, and I love the way you are very soft spoken yet powerful. If that,
Oh, yeah, that describes you as well. Yeah, you're a very generous person also to include me in all these wonderful projects that you have. That's very nice of you. Yeah, I think, well, everyone needs to also be an activist in their own way, right? Like, and being an activist isn't always about, yelling or even protesting on the streets. That's some ways that we have to do it sometimes. But I think I've chosen more of an educational route, and so, yeah. So you don't need to you don't need to yell or even cuss, although I do a lot of that at home in private, the cussing,
Me too.
not in the classroom and not on the radio. But anyway, yeah, to just speak from your heart, and actually haven't you found that sometimes if you phrase things in a way that like a child would understand it, or the way a child would say it, that gets to the heart of things, like, I don't want to hurt animals, or animals don't want to be put in the oven, or honestly, the smartest stuff comes from kids. They can just cut right to it with something really sweet that they'll say.
Yeah, and that's very disarming.
Yeah.
It's not threatening.
Yeah.
So that's great advice. We're already getting down to tactics here. Okay, yeah. So I'd love to hear about. Okay, so what led you to veganism? Let's just start there.
Yeah, I was at University of Florida for my undergrad, and I started there in 1989. And there was a young woman, it would be great if I remembered her name, but I don't, who was vegan. And of course, it feels like there weren't that many people who were vegan in 1989 at college. And so, but I was already intrigued because I cared about animals, and I had done some stuff in high school, like writing companies about not testing on animals and things like that. And but then I don't think I knew anybody in high school who was vegan or anything. And so then there was a Students for the Ethical Treatment of Animals group at University of Florida. So there's an animal rights group. So she told me about that, and I went with her to those meetings. And then I was active in that group for the 4 years that I was there. And so I knew that I wanted to be vegetarian, but when I kind of tried to do it at college, but I never had my own kitchen, and I was on these meal plans. And back then, like in the early 90s, they didn't really accommodate vegetarians like they do now. It's like, this is what you're getting for dinner, and there's going to be an animal in the middle of it. And anyway, so whatever the excuse, I just knew that I had to wait until I graduated. And so then I did kind of start, when I graduated in 1993, moved back in with my parents, of course, in Lilburn, Georgia. I just started like phasing out different types of animals just to adjust to it, because I knew I was making a big commitment. So I kind of eased into it. And then I moved to Fort Myers, Florida, and I knew, well, I guess I volunteered at PETA, and they were in DC at the time. They've since moved to Virginia, I think. But anyway, and to be an intern there, I really was just using my vacation time at work to be there for like a week volunteering, but they called it an internship. And that was in 1996. And they wanted you to be vegan to be an intern. They're like, don't wear any leather. And back then it just seemed like you were wearing watches, and they had a leather strap. It just, and like leather belts. There was kind of more, I mean, maybe I'm just don't even pay attention now to leather, but I just felt like, oh God, I have a lot of leather on and just different things. So because I was just doing that 1 week volunteering at PETA in DC in 1996, I just was like, you know what? I want to go vegan anyway. And so that was kind of just the impetus I needed to like phase out the milk and the eggs, since I was already vegetarian. So I'm realizing that was 30 years ago, 1996 to 2026. So, I'm so proud of that. Like, I just am so excited, because I knew that when I was doing it, it felt right, and that I wanted to keep doing it, even though society makes it hard for you sometimes to keep it up. But I think my attachment to animal rights organizations throughout my life and staying involved in the movement has kept me motivated.
Yeah, the movement has really changed. I think in 85 is that was when I first became aware of, slowly became aware of what was going on. So it wasn't all linear for me. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's like things layer on, and you meet people and you're like, oh, well, they're vegetarian. That's really cool. I might want to do that. And then, and you start kind of phasing out certain things. I mean, you meet some people who will just go to an animal sanctuary, and then the next day they don't eat it. And I'm like, wow, that is amazing. Just took me I guess from the time I went vegetarian to the time I was vegan was like 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
a slower process.
Yes. And then, that's wonderful too, that we are able to have that slower process, so we can hold a space, a safe space for people that are doing that and not going overnight, that we're like, okay, well, we get it because we did that. So yeah. So y'all, whoever's watching, I see that Ellen is here from Sugar Grove, Illinois. Thanks for watching. Let us know where you're watching, and if you have questions for Carrie. So when you did switch your lifestyle, what did your friends and family think? I mean, did you feel isolated? Did you?
Well,
I don't know. How was it
I was
for you?
living at home at the time, and this was out in Gwinnett County, Lilburn. And so it's not a vegetarian mecca out there. And honestly, where was a vegetarian mecca at that time? But because this is also before the natural food stores, we had just regular grocery stores and stuff. Although, fun fact, we did have Sevenanda Natural Foods, which was in Little Five Points and still is. That was a vegetarian co-op. And so I remember driving out all the way from Gwinnett County into Atlanta, which seemed like a long way at the time, to go to Sevenanda to get some vegan products or whatever in the early 90s. But my parents, they didn't make fun of me or anything. So, I mean, I don't actually remember being isolated. I do remember some people at work making kind of dumb comments, like you come back from lunch and they'll be like, did you have a hamburger? Ha, ha, ha. And it's like, that's your joke? I mean, that like, yeah, I
That's pretty lame.
out the window today and ate a hamburger. No. So back then it was like a source of getting teased at work. Now that I work at a university, I feel like people know better than to do that. They're not going to tease you about things at a university. But when I worked in corporations, yeah, I feel like people just kind of teased you about it, but not really in a mean way. But it was kind of different back in the 90s, I think, to do that. So, but I will say then when I moved to Fort Myers, I moved out, so I wasn't with my parents anymore. Suddenly my brother and my mom decided to try vegetarianism. So, and then they kept up with it and they're still doing it. So and then my dad decided to not eat any animals except fish, and he hardly ever eats fish. So, and then my brother married Anne, and then she became vegan, and then now they have 2 vegetarian kids, my niece and nephew, Olivia and Grant. So like suddenly I did have a family who was really supportive. When growing up in Florida, we always ate animals all the time, all of us, right? And then but now my niece and nephew are growing up, and all our holidays don't have a big bird in the middle of them, on the table. So it's like, and it's hard to kind of even explain to them why we used to eat that way, because they don't have to grow up with that, even though they go to school and recognize that a lot of other people aren't vegetarian either. But in their household, their whole family, it's pretty normal. And I think that's been really a blessing to have that. And then, of course, you try to make friends with people in these groups. I mean, not all my friends are vegetarian or vegan, but you do make vegetarian and vegan friends if you join animal rights groups or vegan groups. And then there's kind of a special bond that you have. So like my friendship with Melody Paris is really important to me. And she's the co-host on In Tune to Nature, and she does the Second Opinion radio show. And she also runs the Georgia Animal Rights and Protection Group. So we just have a lot in common. And it's nice to, I always miss her if I don't see her enough,
I know. I love her. And I love the parade.
Yeah, the Inman Park parade, they always, GARP, Georgia Animal Rights and Protection, always hands out vegetarian starter kits and candy and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that I had to miss it this year, and I was so sad, but nevertheless, I had to. There was a funeral I attended, but I was with everyone in spirit, so I'm always looking for that, and I'm looking for to go stand at the events with the signs for the circus and aquarium. So yeah, I love GARP, and I love your radio show. I was listening to it the other day, and well, you all are doing so much, you and Melody, and you're doing it in your own way. And it's a different sort of way than a lot of people think that activism is done. So anyway, we'll talk more about that. So what would you tell a new vegan that was depressed and sad? I mean, it's hard when you're a new vegan and no one listens to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, of course, people get angry. So,
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I do think it is nice to try to make some vegan friends so that you have somebody to commiserate with and to eat with. And hopefully you, even just your old, friends that have been there for a long time, even if they don't go vegetarian, it's nice if those friends would eat plant-based meals around you. Like that would just be easier. So that would be nice if people did that for their vegetarian or vegan friends, is like, you don't have to eat a ham sandwich or a pepperoni pizza when you're hanging out with that friend. Because obviously you're going to be going to vegan friendly places. So I think everyone should order that. So I think if other people are more supportive like that, it helps. But I mean, it depends. Like some people feel the need to tell other people and try to convert them. And I am one of those people that likes to, tell people what to do. But and yeah, that can be depressing when people are making fun of you, or like you do your little activism on campus and then you look at the sign up sheet and then someone's put like hamburger McMasterson or something on there, like, and you're just like, okay, like they're just kind of making fun of things, and it's like, all right, well, this is kind of serious to me, but not to you. So I guess I would just say hang in there, because it's also something the most important person is you. Like, you're doing this for you and the animals, and you're the one you have to impress. And you're the one you have to support yourself first and foremost, and not let, a world that oppresses animals kind of drag you back into it just from inertia or something. So I think you have to actively seek out support and other people. And then in the meantime, you're influencing other people. And yeah, the people that are making fun of you now, maybe some of them, in 5 or 10 years, maybe they won't be eating animals. You don't know. So you never really know all the influence that you're having, the ripple effect.
Yeah, that's very true. Because if you had asked me in college when I was just smirking at my friend who told me he was vegetarian that I would be vegan now, and I would have said no way. But yeah, I think what you said was very important, because you're not, when you live for yourself and your values, and you know that, like, then you don't have to feel bad. If you could just realize that, I'm living for myself. Who cares if the world makes fun of me? Because ultimately you have to live with yourself when you go to sleep at night.
Right.
No one else does, right? It's just you. So if you're really living with authenticity and your values, then you can sleep peacefully. And if you're, and I guess if that's the hard thing, I mean, it does bring peace to me being vegan. And what would you say about peace and veganism to someone that maybe didn't understand it?
Yeah. Well, at its core, it's a nonviolence. It's part of being a nonviolence movement where you're trying to avoid intentional killing and exploitation. Because even the egg industry and the milk industry, they're not killing the female animals immediately, but when their production goes down, they do kill them. And then if there's any babies, they're kind of stuck in that system. So there's violence and suffering involved in that, even if it was done on a small farm. Whenever you're making money off of some animal, it's at their expense in some way, and they are causing suffering. And so I do think for the majority of people, there's a guilt that is residing somewhere in them, especially in people that don't want to look at anything, like, or they're like, oh, don't tell me about that or whatever. Like, at that point, you're saying that the things, the beings who you're eating, that it does bother you. Like, if you had to meet the actual individual you were eating, like if you saw them alive, would you point them out, and would you want to kill them yourself? I mean, some people might be okay with doing that, but I think a lot of us aren't okay. And that's actually, for me, what I realized, like, that I was hiring a hitman or something, who's just this poor underpaid worker, who really didn't want to also be killing these animals for me. I'm hiring someone else to do that bloody, dirty work because I wasn't willing to do it and don't want to do it. And luckily I don't have to do it. So I do think it helps you when you see all the other animals around the world, or just out in our neighborhoods, and squirrels, or like, there is a little sense that kind of, I'm on board with you or whatever. But we don't get to meet a lot of the farmed animals, but sometimes we'll drive by and we'll see cows in the field. Or when I was in Australia, I saw a lot of sheep, and I pulled over and was kind of listening to them and connecting with them and kind of feeling bad for them. And I don't know, but there's a certain connection that you have. So, and for me, it's just a sense of pride. Like, it's really what I'm proudest. It's not my doctorate or my books or anything. What I'm proudest of is not eating animals or animal products for the last 30 years. And also, veganism is larger in terms of, you don't, like, this sweater is not made of wool, and you don't, like, the makeup I'm wearing was not tested on animals. And so, like, it's a whole lifestyle where you try to boycott exploitation. It's not perfect, but you try. And so then you feel better about where you're putting your money and your time.
Yeah, very true. And that goes back again to the being able to sleep at night when you know the truth, right? You can never unsee something. So once you see it, I mean, you can unsee it, and then you might be on a path to, like, it might be a rocky path to get to your destination, and that's
Yeah.
okay, because we're humans. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it can
anyway.
help you stick with it too, is if you make a lot of projections and you let a lot of people know that you're
Oh,
vegan and why
yeah.
you're doing this, because then you've actually made a public commitment. And so that, like, after I've written these books and stuff, I just can't sneak away and suddenly back up and just hope nobody notices that I'm eating, pig's ribs or something. Like, that's not going to work either. So I think that helps, and I think you need to connect with animal protection organizations. You need to get their newsletters and their action items. So even if your local network of people is not into animal rights, there's a whole international, national, and local group of people who are. And if you stay connected with them and you're constantly exposed to all the latest issues in the slaughterhouses and in the factory farming and everything, then anyway, that's going to be very motivating to you. At least for me, it has been.
Yeah, it is true. Those are anchors. So I
Yeah.
know what you're saying. So, yeah. And I see YouTube 1970. Thanks for joining us. And Tavares, which I don't know why I have a problem saying that, Florida,
Florida.
35
That's
miles.
where I'm
Yeah.
from.
Nice. Yeah. And then there's Ellen again. And also let us know if you have any questions and please subscribe, y'all. So, um, well, let's talk about the radio show. Tell us when and where. Tell us about
Oh,
that.
yeah. Hopefully your listeners, especially if they're from Atlanta, have heard of Radio Free Georgia, because it's been around. It's about as old as I am. So I think it's like 53 years old. And it's just a progressive radio station that started in the 70s. And it's locally run and just as nonprofit and non-commercial. And so they have all kinds of progressive shows and independent music. But then there were two shows on WRFG, which is 89.3 FM if you're in Metro Atlanta. But you can also listen at WRFG.org for Radio Free Georgia. Anyway, so anywhere in the world, you can still listen to this radio station. But so there's two shows that were kind of eco and animal shows. And so that was in the 2000s, the early 2000s that they existed. And because when I first moved to Atlanta and got this job at Georgia State, I lived down the street from the Little Five Points Community Center where the radio station is. And when I met Melody Paris and Sonia Schwartz, who were doing it was at a farm sanctuary walkathon that we had at the time. They invited me to come to the station too. So I just started kind of observing the Second Opinion radio show on Wednesday nights at 6:00. And then I kind of became part of the team. I took the broadcast class there and learned how to do the board. We're called air shifters there. And then, so I would just kind of be on the team and we would just chat and talk. But then they Intuned to Nature show, the person, Lisa Daly, who was doing that show which was the nature show, she moved away. And so then suddenly, like, they needed someone to host it. So Sonia Schwartz and I started taking turns on that. And then after the pandemic, it became like Melody Paris and I taking turns on that. So that was 2010. So it has been about 15 years or so that I have been doing that. And so I was like, look, I was starting to count it out and I was like, oh, okay, well, I've done approximately, because I do it every other week. It's a weekly show now on Wednesdays. And Melody and I kind of take turns. But I've done over 350 shows over that time. And that's like 10,000 minutes of people, I don't know how many people, being exposed to a biocentric perspective, like a perspective that cares about humans, but is not human-centered, that is like centering around all life and is suddenly like, if you're talking about research, we're not for animal research, like we're not for testing on just anybody. And again, we're talking about eco-friendly food. It has to also be animal-friendly food. And so we take what I call a biocentric perspective. And so it's an environmental show. Intuned to Nature is an environmental show that's also an animal rights show, because not all environmentalism includes animal rights. Some of it is kind of more just focused on endangered species and humans or something. So I feel like Intuned to Nature is a very inclusive show. And then it was cool because like during the pandemic in 2020, we couldn't go in the studio anymore. And so that was a radical change. And then I didn't get to see Melody as much because then we were all at home. So that wasn't as good. And then I had to learn how to use GarageBand software and like start editing. And so, and you know how to do this because now you have these shows. But so that was kind of new for me to suddenly start podcasting. But then that opened up. So that was a silver lining of the pandemic, was like, I think now the show can reach more people because when you do a radio show, it's very ephemeral. Like there's some good thoughts, but they float away, and although a lot of my, flubbing up things also floats away. So that's good too. But anyway, now it's on record. But so I started pre-recording on Zoom, like all these interviews. And it also made it easier to get people because it used to be I had to call someone at 6:00. You had to, and it's hard to get people overseas and the whole thing. So now I could get people from all over the world and do an interview with them. And so now the Podbean site I have for In Tune to Nature, it has like almost 9,000 downloads of about 114 shows. So even though I've done like 350 shows over the course of this that have been on the radio, now at like over 100 of them are kind of archived at, through Podbean. And then I link it out so it shows up on Apple Podcasts and YouTube and Spotify and different places too, so that more people, if they're looking for In Tune to Nature, can stream it on whatever site and they can pick whatever topics they're interested in. But it's kind of a low tech show. Well, similar to you in the sense that I just get one person who I think is doing good stuff and I just talk to them. Like it's not high production, not real complicated. Because similar to you, like, I don't know for sure if you have a lot of other people helping you, but like I have to do everything. I'm the marketer. I'm the person who is the host. I get the guests and I arrange it. And I see you doing all of that work too. So, because if you ever listen to, NPR radio shows or whatever, at the end, there's this list of people. And I'm like, oh, that must be nice. There's like, 5 people working on that show. But so I just find somebody who's an artist or, like an animal ethologist like Mark Beckoff or Jonathan Balcom. And you get to talk to them, or scholars like Jennifer Jacquet was, making statements and writing about how we shouldn't look at fish as like just a stock of fish, but as individuals. So you get to meet all these really cool people. They're poets like Nicole Brown and Stephen Wing from around here.
I know him.
Yeah, right. Oh, he's a great person for your show too. And so then I just give them a chance to talk. And I like that it's similar to your show. It's not like a soundbite thing. It's not like you have to just say something clever in 30 minutes or 30 seconds, like you're being interviewed on the news or something. So that's a luxury these days. Like you giving all this time for a in-depth discussion and not just a snippet of little things, just all haphazard. So, and I like to meet all these people too. Isn't that cool that all the people that you've gotten to meet because of you're all creatures, and you had another vegan podcast that you were doing. So that's just also inspiring to me to constantly network with all these wonderful people from around the world. A lot of times I'm reading their books and I'm like Melanie Challenger, I was reading her books about animal dignity or, how to be a human animal. And I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. Like, I'm going to have her on my show. And then there's like my friends that are activists that I get to have on. Like I just interviewed the other night, Vas Stanescu from Mercer, who, and similar to like Deb Merskin, she, like, we all do communication related to animal rights and we're all professors. And so I'll have them talk about their research. Or Christopher Soul Eubanks, who's here in Atlanta, who's an awesome activist that started Apex Advocacy to support vegans of color and kind of bring activists of color into the animal rights movement and expand the animal rights movement kind of from a justice perspective. Or Lori Marino, who used to live here and work at Emory, but that's doing the Whale Sanctuary Project. So, and she was interviewed in Blackfish. So she's been on the show a lot talking about rights for whales for them not to be in captivity. So as an In Tune to Nature show, I focus on veganism because that is eco-friendly, but also just a lot on wildlife and like getting pollutants out of our environment and things like that. But I think I do focus a lot on wild animals, and because it's become more important to me, this idea that we need to share the planet with them and we're not doing a very good job.
You're right about that. Yeah. Well, gosh, I know I resonate with getting to meet people. That's wonderful, like Mark Beckoff, and then Captain Paul Watson.
Oh,
That was,
did you?
yeah.
Oh, did you interview him? Oh, that's so cool. Melody Paris has interviewed him, I think. That's
Yeah,
cool.
and Melanie interviewed me, and this was when I first started doing vegan empowerment coaching, which I'm not doing that. I mean, I can do it if there's a vegan that wants to be
Didn't I meet you at her house? Is that where we met, at like a party at Melody's house? I think we did.
Yeah, that was, yeah, I remember we were in the kitchen.
Yeah, I remember that too now that we're talking about it. Oh, you know who I had never interviewed, who I just thought was too big of a person to get, was Dr. Jane Goodall. So I feel bad that I never even tried. You know, sometimes you're like, oh, well, she would just be too busy. Did you ever try to interview her?
I did not, and I was just thinking when you were talking, I should reach out to try for Melanie Joy. Have you interviewed her?
I did, but it's been a long time. Yeah, she had written a really important book about carnism and like the psychology of how we separate out certain animals like dogs. They're inedible and cows are edible. Just so, yeah, she does fascinating work. Yeah, Melanie Joy. But yeah, it has been a long time. She came to town and I hosted her at Georgia State University, but this might have been like 12 years ago, to give a talk on campus.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I don't remember everything you were saying I was resonating with, but yeah. So yeah, and we do have a team. I do set up the streams and everything, but we do have a marketer,
oh, that's good,
who helps with this. But I also have my own show, which that's for men. So, and that's,
you get a lot really going on.
Yeah. So I know, I mean, juggling all of it is, it's a challenge, get the picture, chase down the people.
Yeah.
Sometimes
the bios, the pictures,
everything.
The questions. Yes. It's a lot.
Yeah. But
I hope people get the idea though, that they could do their own show. Cause we do it, like
we do it. Right. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, it is a challenge, it
takes a lot of time, but it's something now it's accessible. This kind of thing didn't used to be accessible. Like I don't think I would have a podcast if I didn't have because my podcast is my radio show. If I didn't have the opportunity through, Radio Free Georgia, I don't know that I would have been podcasting. But now you don't have to have the limited spaces of a radio show with that limited airtime for you to have a voice by just having a YouTube channel or something and doing it your way that's clever and interesting to you and maybe to your friends, and it might catch on.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, things have really changed, and it's a blessing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is, right? Us having a voice in the internet age that we didn't used to have. Yeah, because back in the day, it used to be you really had to have a group. Like the network before the internet was also, although we still should go to groups and interact in person. But I have this vegetarian society. I kind of dug this out. This nice. Is from the 1990s. This is my first group that I thought I was joining this group when I moved to Florida in the 1990s. And then the woman who was starting it was like, no, you do. It was my first meeting. And she's like, no, why don't you're young. Why don't you do it? And I was like, what? And so then I ran that for years. And then I have all these t-shirts, so I wanted to show you.
Yeah.
And at University of Georgia, when I was there getting my master's, we started the Speak Out for Species group.
Oh,
and
nice.
Has, Morse code on it. And I'm very proud of this group because Eric and Wendy, some librarians there, ran that group and it was so successful and it influenced so many people in the community and so many students at University of Georgia. They changed the logo so it's like more cheerful.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it has more animals on it. And so those campus groups are really important too. So creating that network. So even before we had these podcasts and different kinds of things. We just used magazines and zines and going to these groups and showing documentaries. Like that was the way that we got people informed. But we can still do that. It doesn't all have to be digital, but now we have our own voice, because it used to be, like the only way you could get more public attention was try to be interviewed by someone in the news, and then they might make you look kind of foolish or just kind of give you a snippet, or like, because the news loves to interview animal rights activists, or like when I ran that Vegetarian Society of Southwest Florida, always at Thanksgiving they wanted someone to interview, like, God, what do you eat? Like, if you don't eat turkey, oh my God, what do you eat? So it was like, but honestly, having that, at least you have like, if you have a group, you have a platform. Just like having a book has given me a platform too. But so now you can be the spokesperson who the news asks about, what do you eat? Because there's an answer to that. Plenty. I eat plenty, and it's good. So that actually has been nice for me, to whether I've been a student in grad school or at undergrad, or now we have the Peace Club. Where's my other? Oh, this is a bag. But the students designed this awesome logo with a cow and an avocado and a solidarity fist. For the people for the end of animal cruelty and exploitation is the animal rights group at Georgia State University, where I am. So I do think it's really important to have a student group too at any university or any high school. So that's something that people could do, is start a club or a group in their area.
Yeah, and never underestimate the power of social media. I mean, someone from my church came up to me that I don't really know. I've seen her. I guess we're friends on Facebook, because she said, well, thanks to you, I've been eating
all these friends we have on Facebook.
Yeah, but I mean, she's eating more fruits and vegetables and not as much meat. So I mean,
awesome
you don't ever know who's watching behind the scenes.
That's what's really, I have to say, that's what's cool about the radio show, because sometimes people are like, oh, how many people listen to your radio show? I'm like, I have no idea. But if it's during drive time, like in the evenings in Atlanta, I mean, you think how many people visit Atlanta? I mean, there has to be hundreds or thousands of people listening to an FM station. I mean, I don't know if there's as much anymore, because of maybe people don't listen to their radio, although I still do in the car when I'm driving. So, but that's what's kind of cool. Am I talking to 5 people or 500 people or 5,000 people? I literally don't know. That's really kind of fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
We just, I mean, the world is amazing that we can't. I mean, how do you wrap your mind around that, right? That we are even talking like we are now.
Yeah, exactly. And that, so I see people in Florida are listening, and so, and I, invited my cousin in Chicago to listen in. And so it's like, the way we can make connections from people around the world is really fabulous. So for activism, there's so much we can do in the digital age. And certainly people of all ages, but especially the younger generation, are really taking hold of that in creative ways.
Yes, exactly. There are so many new ways to do activism. So, so let's talk about your books. So, okay. So tell us about the books that you have done and what is coming up.
Okay. Yeah. This Framing Farming book was my first book. And all the pictures on my books have always, or a lot of these books and inside, come from the We Animals group that Joanne MacArthur does, from the animal photojournalism. So I also highly recommend people to look up We Animals, because she has a whole archive of animal rights oriented photographs of animals, and then she makes them available in a nonprofit way for people. So that Framing Farming book was me. That was my first thing in wondering, it's about vegan advocacy. Like, okay, I have this vegetarian society or this animal rights group on campus, and I get all this literature, from PETA or the Humane League or the Humane Society or something. And then, you set it out on the table and then you talk to people, but you're like, or you're leafleting, anti-dairy, on Mother's Day, save the cow mothers, all these little creative things you're doing. but you're like, is what I'm handing them is it convincing, and what should the picture be? Like, just so all these things were interesting to me. Or how did documentaries make a difference? Or when I talk to the news, is it good if, or is it not working the way that, the news is covering these topics? So that's why I went into academia to study these things. I was in my early 30s when I started doing that. And so my dissertation was studying all this vegan advocacy stuff that I was constantly handing out, and talking to some of the people like Ingrid Newkirk or Bruce Friedrich at PETA, and Jean Bauer from Farm Sanctuary, and all these people, and just learning from them, but also making recommendations. Because at the forefront, I thought we needed to make sure that if we are animal rights organizations, that even though we're going to talk about health, and we're going to talk about the environment and world hunger and all the things that are impacted in positive ways by us going plant-based, I also think we should foreground an animal rights philosophy and not shy away from it. So the idea is, we're not eating animals because we don't need to, and you don't want to kill anybody, and you don't want to use or abuse them. Like, that's the basic thing. So I always wanted to find ways that our vegan advocacy could be animal centric, while we're still talking about, human health and different kinds of things. So that's what that book is about. And then I was just realizing how much the animal rights movement needed to work with other groups, or sometimes we feel marginalized. Like, if you join human rights groups, of course, and then you join environmental groups, you feel a little bit like they're not that interested in veganism, or they take the animal thing and they push it way down in priority. And sometimes it doesn't seem fair. So, and I also feel like we have common opponents sometimes, like major corporations are exploiting, like if you look at the palm oil industry, even, or factory farming and different things. It's like these companies are harming humans. They're polluting the environment. It's awful. They're killing all these animals, the non-human animals. So that's when I kind of branched out, and I did the Human Animal Earthling Identity book, which came out just in 2020. And the Human Animal, and I have websites for each of these books that also give excerpts for people, or maybe you could just go to the library and get the books. So with that book, yeah, I was looking at all the campaigns from all these groups, like it could be World Wildlife Fund and PETA and the human rights groups, anti-slavery groups, and ocean protection groups. And then I was looking at all their values, and I kind of just merged all the common values and came up with a Human Animal Earthling Identity, where you're an activist, but you don't just care about one thing. Like, you care about all beings, which is what your show is about, all creatures. So I didn't want the non-human animal world to get left out of that, because sometimes it does. So I was also trying to center kind of animal rights within human rights and environmentalism, but making sure that animal rights also doesn't ignore those things either. So yeah, coming up with common values, like being life-oriented, responsible, fair, and promoting unity. Like, those are some of the core values, including like compassion and justice and things like that. And the idea is that if we build that into people's identity, you don't have to have a campaign that tells somebody, not to support, like, you're going to have people wanting to support a living wage, for people, and fair trade, and then vegan, and not wearing fur, and then recycling or composting, or, clean energy, because you have that orientation. Like, so that's where I think the identity part is so important, that if you it's kind of like virtue ethics. If you make that part of your identity that you are responsible, you care for others, and you make sure that what you're doing doesn't harm people or tries to help, you should do that for everybody. So that's the Human Animal Earthling Identity. And if you have a campaign that you're doing, even if it's a single issue to help the homeless or to help farmed animals, you also want to bring in the other stakeholders and not ignore them, like, and not just focus so much on one thing. So that was the idea for that. And then I've suddenly become much more focused on wildlife. I read I read E.O. Wilson's book, Half Earth. I don't know if you've read Half Earth, and there's a Half Earth Project. It's a nonprofit group they have, where as a biologist, late in his career, he just went out and he just said it, like, before he passed away, which was, we need to dedicate half the earth to wildlife, because if we don't do that, we're dragging everyone down. Like he and a lot of other scientists have noted, we've fragmented the world for wild animal habitats, and then they have these little patches or islands where it might be safe for them, but then they are inbreeding, or then if they try to leave to get more food, they're getting run over or shot or something. So there's all this wildlife connectivity projects and corridor projects that are happening. And I think the idea of giving half the earth to wildlife doesn't mean that humans cannot ever be in those areas. It's just that we can't have a highly extractive type of, like, we can't factory fish the entire oceans. Like, you have to give, and I'd like to not factory fish anywhere, but you have to give animals space that they can recover from this onslaught of violence that we have. So I got really into that. And because also when you're into animal rights, and a lot of it where we focus on the industrialized domesticated animals, like they're stuck in the lab, they're stuck in the circus, they're stuck at the zoo, they're stuck in a factory farm. But it's also, the purpose of what we're doing is trying to create a world where animals could live free. And so, but then I'm like, oh no, if you could free these animals or keep them out of cages, where would they live? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then it's like the extension of animal rights is animal liberation, animal freedom. And so now my next book is talking to all these people across the United States, from the Everglades up to Glacier Bay in Alaska, around these national park regions, and talking to wildlife advocates about, how are you collaborating with people? How are you working to save wildlife and make space for them? So like the humpback whales are not getting hit by ships and killed when they're migrating, and the wolves aren't getting killed when they step out of Yellowstone National Park, although that's still happening. Or the panthers, the Florida panthers, not stuck down in the Everglades because of canals and the two highways that cut across the Everglades. It just, we create so many things that are accidentally hurting animals. Like, a lot of times we don't mean to hurt them, but we're so focused on our own development that we cut right through their areas, and like with roads and subdivisions and stuff. And then we never think, oh, that was their home. So it's a kind of colonialism,
Yeah.
we do this to humans who are native to areas, and we do this to other animals. We colonize their area and just go, well, oh, hope you can find some other place. But then if they end up in our neighborhoods, like coyotes have to, then everyone gets upset. Like, or if there's a bear in our neighborhood, that's not really as much in Atlanta, maybe in North Atlanta, but in Asheville and different places, like, yeah, you are going to have bears, and we all have coyotes now. Because like, also, where else are they going to live? Like, we don't give them that much space. So it's been so cool to talk to all these fascinating people, some of whom I interviewed on my radio show, and then now I'm interviewing them for my book. Like, it was cool that I interviewed Douglas Chadwick. He had written a book called 3/5 a Grizzly with Patagonia Press. And he was on my radio show just talking about how we're actually related to grizzlies and all these animals, and that there's all this biological connection between us, like we're kin with all these animals. And then I ended up, several years later, sitting in his kitchen in northern Montana and Kalispell, like outside of Glacier National Park. It's practically in Canada, talking to him and meeting his dog, like interviewing him because he's an activist. And so that's really fascinating. So my main problem now is that I talk to 48 really cool people and ask them all kinds of questions about their wildlife coexistence ideas and their visions and stories, why they like wildlife. And now I have like 600,000 words of awesome transcripts, and I'm like overwhelmed. I'm like, oh, okay, how do I take a book? Because honestly, when I went out to Montana, you can, I'm sure people have, but also you can write a book just about the tensions around like wolves, bears, and bison out in the West in Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, like that was the first thing I did before I went to three other national parks. And so, including Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So every place I go, I'm kind of overwhelmed with just the issues in that area with the species, from salamanders to birds to whales and manatees and alligators and panthers, but bears are kind of a common theme because black bears are in the Everglades, and you go all the way up to Alaska, and apparently there's even black bears there, but more grizzlies up there. And also deer. Like deer are kind of an animal that crosses, and birds, of course. So it's been just an awesome journey for me to meet all these people. And this wasn't a time when I actually went to these places. Because, a lot of times, we interview people remotely, and that's nice. But to actually get to travel, and then I got to see bison in the wild. I'm not going to places where they're kept in captivity. And yes, see alligators, maybe a little too close in the Everglades. So it's pretty, I never saw a panther. There's certain animals like wolverines or panthers, or like, I don't expect to see them. Like they're very actually really don't see coyotes that much either. So I didn't get to see everybody, but that's how it is with wildlife. It's their choice if we see them. And yeah, it's just really exciting to talk to all these people.
Well, it is very exciting. It's exciting to see how, you are sharing about the interconnectedness of all life, and that welcoming, like we're not just to be the voice for animals. I mean, we also want to be the voice for human animals. We care, and the compassion for the factory farm workers there also.
Yes.
I mean, it's this circle of life.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. And then, so I volunteer at the Nature Center over here, Chattahoochee Nature Center, and also at Lucky's Wildlife. And so, yeah, that's really brought me a new perspective also about that. Yeah.
Melody's doing a lot of that wildlife rehab, and my friend Dept in Oregon does wildlife rehab. That is wonderful that you're doing that.
Well, it really has made me aware of the other animals, and bringing them all together. And then, at the Nature Center, so I've trained with snakes. So I love snakes now.
Wow.
I used to be, of course, I was one of those typical people that was so scared of snakes. So yeah, and really doing something about it is a blessing, and getting to go clean all the little opossum cages.
And you're being of service to these animals. Yeah, that's another way to get past. You talked about people being depressed, because there are obviously a lot of reasons to be depressed these days. But if you can join a group where you're actually, especially where you're hands-on at a sanctuary or doing rehab, yeah, that's amazing to do that, and really like rejuvenating to also make those connections with these other animals. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of sanctuaries and rehab places.
Yeah, and I've learned so much about, keystone species, and things that I had no idea about, and I've been able to defend. Now I can defend coyotes better, and I can defend wolves, and just to have more knowledge. And of course, I'm not going to scream at people, but I'll just be able to give them the facts. When people are so mad at coyotes.
Scared. Yeah, if they see a coyote or a bear or a snake. And so that's what we've been conditioned to do. And we need to that's also a theme that's going to be in my book, is like fear versus admiration and like understanding. So if you change that orientation, that's going to change the way you're more accepting of them being in the environment, and not all about you and constant security that we have to like sanitize our environment so that it never has any, sometimes we act like there's a city and it should have like a boundary around it, and like we're going to let some songbirds in, but that's about it. And then all the other animals like, no, this is just for us. It can't be that segregated. We're all living together. Yeah.
Right. We all need each other. And it's so interesting, because I used to think that snakes were going to chase me down, which was crazy.
I don't care that much about you. Yeah.
I know. And then, I did hear one of the naturalists say, which was a very good point, that look how small the snake is compared to us, right? You think the
He's
snake's not
down
going to
there
try
on
to
the
do
ground. Yeah,
right. They're not going to take on, that would be like me taking on Godzilla or something.
yeah, right. So they're not, yeah. So that's good that you learned that. Or a lot of times when we're walking, or even when in Alaska, if I was kind of by myself, I would like sing or talk to myself because you want to make some noise or have a
Hmm.
bell and like, or shuffle your feet. Because so long as you're not, if the animals know you're around, they usually just kind of leave you alone. But you don't want to be so quiet when you're out in a wilderness environment that you step on them or run into them. Like people have literally run into bears with their um when they're like mountain biking or something, because like, and that's going to cause a problem, and then the animal might be aggressive because you just literally stepped on him or something. So yes, you just, so you learn how to be bear wise or snake wise or things like this, and then we have an obligation to accommodate to them. That's going to be a big theme of the book. It's not just like how could we be safe, it's about how can we make life safe for them too. And maybe if, like if they're having babies at a certain time of year, you don't go on those trails at those times, or we close some roads down when turtles or something are crossing the roads, or it's like, let's make it, let's share. It can't always be that we ask them to do all the accommodating. We have to meet them halfway at least. So, and like, how do we do that? And are we willing to do that? Yeah.
Right. And that brings us, yeah, we all have to we have to
Yeah,
coexist.
like that's what
We're not going to make
coexisting
it.
is. It's a compromise that we make, but for the greater good of all of us. And it'll have, ripple effects that will be wonderful. So yeah, a lot of times like out west or even in Florida and different places, if people have farms, they don't like the predator animals or the
Mm.
carnivorous animals, but there you can have dogs and certain kinds of fencing that protects domesticated animals. So, but are you willing to do that? Like instead of
Yeah.
just shooting a panther or a bear, or because you think it might, or he or she might hurt, your chickens or your sheep or whatever. Like there's ways that every people know ways to make it work. And so, but are you willing to make it work with the bear proof garbage cans, in certain neighborhoods? Like if you do those things, then and sometimes we have to regulate that, and sometimes people will do it on their own, or sometimes we have to pay for those bear proof garbage cans to make sure. So that's what the community of humans needs to work out, like, okay, how are we going to do this and make it affordable, and fair for everybody.
Yes. Yes, for everybody. That's the key. So, well, y'all that are watching, I'm appreciating this. And also, please check out the www.all-creatures.org to make a one-time donation or recurring donation for these programs. And also check out Carrie's links because for your books, where can we find you? I see that we're coming to the end of the time. It went by so fast, but please give us your, your final thoughts and where people can get these books and listen again to the radio show.
Oh yeah, basically if you look up In Tune to Nature, like on any of the sites that you use for streaming, you'll, well, I don't know if this little logo is going to come up yet, but there is also one with raccoons.
Uh-huh.
Raccoons for In Tune to Nature. That's probably the best way to find me there. Or you can listen in at wrfg.org at 6 o'clock on Wednesdays, Eastern time. And then for the books, like I have a Human Animal Earthling Identity.org, and then I have a framingfarming.org, I think it is. So you can, a lot of the recommendations that I make are on those websites. And then, but you also can see if the library has them, because most of the books ends up being like, they're kind of closer to the $30 range because they're academic presses. So I can't get the costs down enough. So that's why I think it's easier if you get them from the library, something like that. So those are probably the main ways to kind of stay in touch with me.
Well, great. Yes. And I'm excited about the next book. I mean, because of my wildlife connection. I
Yeah,
really want to be a voice for that. So, yeah.
awesome. I'm so glad you're doing that. Yeah, and I have this. I was going to give, if we were in person, I would give you this awesome sumo orange because I want to thank you, Marquita, for just being so generous with your time and always doing such positive things in the community.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're all making a difference. It's fun to do,
Yeah.
a little online, a little radio, right, and a little bit in community, and then
Yeah.
see what, we're sprinkling the seeds out there. And everyone that's watching, thanks for everything y'all are doing. I mean, Ellen is teaching kids
Awesome.
with sewing, and compassionate sewing. And then I'm not sure what YouTube 1970, I mean, but I see your beautiful, I can feel your spirit. So thank you for being here. And Grace, here we've got another comment. Grace, home living, be territory wise.
Animals protect
Animals
their
protect.
homes and family the same way. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
right. I love the word home. I think that's so important, Grace, that their habitat, like our, I like to say, like we have a habitat, they have a habitat, and it overlaps, and that is their home too. So can we share space with them and recognize that they have to make a living out on the streets or in the forests or in the oceans. Yeah.
Right. You're right. And yes, I mean, it is their home, and that's one thing I try to
Yeah.
drill into the children's heads.
Yeah.
Just like we don't want to be taken from our home area, they
Yeah.
don't want to lose their home either. So don't ever take an animal away from where you find them.
Yeah. Right. Or if you're rehabbed, you want to put the animal back in his or her community if you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, you always want to put them back. Exactly. Because they're not going to survive. I think about times when I would take an animal and take them out of the habitat. And now I think, oh my gosh, did they make it? But
Yeah.
I
Or a
mean,
lot of times they might try to make it back to
yeah,
where like they have a homing instinct to get back. I know bears do that. If people are like, come remove this bear, they
yeah,
find that the bear often comes back and they can travel 500 miles or more. Like, because that if that's where they want to be, that's where they're going to be.
that's very true. And that's for turtles too, and why they get hit by cars a lot. And I've heard snakes do that too. Everyone wants to be at home. So
They're
let's
trying
just
to get somewhere and like we put our roads and our cars in the way. So yeah,
yeah.
we should be more yeah, so it's about raising awareness, which is what your show does and my In Tune to Nature show does.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Carrie, for coming
Yeah.
on here. It's just always an honor to be in your energy
Oh,
because it's
thanks.
peaceful.
That's very nice. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks
Yeah,
everybody
bye
for watching.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.